I will tell you a story about a man. A story about me, as a matter of fact. I used to have it all, if I may say so myself. An inspiring job, a wife who loved me, and a 2-year-old boy who meant the world to me. I was happy. I was content. And it seemed as if nothing could ever change that. But, of course it did. One day, that would tear my life completely apart, and even make me question my own sanity. The day in question started just like any other day. I had my breakfast in solitude while I watched some TV. Perhaps some kids show my son had been watching earlier. In truth, I can't actually recall. Anyhow, I then got into my car and drove the 2-hour commute to work. The roads were slippery because of all the ice that had formed during the night, but I got to work without any problems. The day then continued on as normal. I had some meetings I needed to attend, some paperwork that had to be looked through, and some new clients to meet. It was my wife's phone call that first broke the routine. The clock had just turned 5 p.m. and I was preparing to go back home to my family, when the buzzing in my pocket alerted me of an incoming call. "Hi, honey," my wife said in an attempt to sound as happy as ever, but the shivering in her voice broke through the facade. I knew she had something she wanted to tell me. My wife is funny that way. So I just answered hi back and then awaited her response. Babe, don't be mad, but a little accident happened while you were at work," she mumbled fast in a nervous voice. "Okay," I said hesitantly. "Yeah, Nathan was playing in the living room while I made lunch and I heard a loud crash, and when I went to look, he had accidentally knocked down your camera from the table," she finished. I told her that it was fine, that I was glad that nothing worse had happened and that Nathan was okay. But on the inside I was crying. I had been saving up money for months to be able to buy that camera, and now? My sadness later turned to anger as I began the drive home. Why didn't she look after him better so this wouldn't have happened? I mean, I know that my son didn't mean to destroy it, and that it really had been just a misfortune that I had left it there unprotected. But still furious, I sloppily parked the car in the driveway and went up to the door. Well, inside, I had a big fight with my wife, but eventually, I just felt I needed to get out of there, so I grabbed my gym bag and went without even saying goodbye. After an hour of weightlifting and treadmill running, all the anger had left my body. I actually felt ashamed of my previous behavior, so I quickly grabbed my stuff and went back home to apologize. Parking a little bit neater, I went up to the door, but before I opened it, I made a decision to just drop it all. What was done, and couldn't be undone. I put on my best face and opened the door. The first thing that greeted me was neither my wife nor my son, but a horrible stench throughout the entire house. My fake happiness turned to fear as I recognized the smell of blood. The lights were off and I couldn't see anything, so I called out my wife's name. No response. At this point, I became really worried about my family's well-being. Maybe someone had hurt them. Maybe someone was in the house. I couldn't remember the door being locked. With this thought in mind, I turned on the lights again. The room flooded with light, and when my eyes got used to the brightness, I saw that it was empty. I reached into my pocket for my phone to call 911. Maybe it was unnecessary, but this was my family. After the call, I cautiously went to the kitchen to get a knife, just in case. I slowly ascended the stairs in search of my wife and child, prepared to defend them both and myself from any intruders. The scent of blood got stronger, and I knew that it was bad. Really bad. As I turned the corner after the staircase, I saw it. The source of the smell. And even worse, what had caused it. On the floor, a few meters in front of me, lay my wife. She was covered in blood, head to toe, and she wasn't moving. Her face had an expression of fear and surprise. I really wish I could say that that was the worst thing. But it wasn't. Bent down over her was a creature. It was humanoid in shape, but covered in black fur, drenched in blood. Only its hands, feet and face were hairless. The skin of the monster was dry and wrinkly, and had a light shade of blue. Its hands were abnormally large and had long razor-sharp claws instead of nails, which it used to tear flesh from my wife's dead body. The sound of the thing eating my dead wife became too much for me, and I let out a gasp of shock and fear. The thing quickly lifted its head to reveal its face. My God, its face! The image of it will forever be haunting my dreams. Its mouth was much longer than any human's, and it was adorned with many long, sharp, bloody teeth. Stuck between them were pieces of my wife, and blood was streaming along its skeleton-like cheeks. The yellow eyes were sunken in and barely had any pupils, but those it had were fixed on me. Its terrifying gaze towards me made me freeze. Its grin slowly changed into a horrible smile, too large for any humans to make. As it stood up, I saw how awfully long its arms were, and how thin it really was. The ribs were sticking out. My fear then turned into an all-consuming rage as I finally grasped the situation. The thing had killed my wife and perhaps my only son. And with this, I broke through my frozenness and lunged forward, screaming at the top of my lungs. The creature screeched back at me and swiped at me with its long, sharp claws. It hit me right in the chest as I buried the knife in its shoulder. The thing made no sounds as I cried in agony. Compared to my wife's half-eaten body, the wound was nothing, but it was deep. As I fell down on the floor, I saw the creature grab the knife still stuck in its shoulder. A dark, thick liquid poured out of the wound I had caused. It looked at me one last time, and with a low, raspy laugh, it threw itself out of the nearest window. Glass shattered everywhere, and I raised my arms to protect my face. Gasping for air, I lay there, side by side with half of my family. And with this, the tears came. How could the last thing we had said to each other be about a stupid camera? Then another sound could be heard. It had probably been present the whole time, but first now could I distinguish it clearly. It was the sound of sobbing, and it came from a closet in the hall. I conquered the pain and got up to open it. When I carefully opened it, I could see my little boy sitting there, crouched down in the corner. His eyes and face were red, and it looked like he had been crying for hours. As I reached in to grab him, he gave out a scream of fear and turned his face away from me. He seemed to fear me. This, and the sound of sirens outside the broken window, were the last thing I clearly saw and heard before I collapsed. The only thing I could remember at that point was just blurry images of getting in the ambulance and the drive to the hospital. Right now, Nathan is with my wife's parents, and I am in prison. They didn't believe my story, and honestly, I'm not surprised. I mean, a monster killed my wife. But that's not all. They said that there were no broken windows, and there had been no one besides me and the rest of my family in the house. Then they said the worst thing. The thing that really made me question if I was losing my mind. They said the cuts on her body wasn't from any claws or jaws, but from a knife. Most probably my knife. But they never could explain the missing flesh though, and they knew for sure that I hadn't been eating her. But they still decided to put me in this damn cell. I know what I saw. I know the truth. But every day I think, what if they were right? Maybe I did kill my wife. But you believe me, right?